Welcome to an epic simulation. It's the 2016 Golden State Warriors versus the 1996 Chicago Bulls. Here are the starting five for the Chicago Bulls. Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, at the center position, Dennis Rodman, for point guard, Ron Harper, and for the power forward, Luke Longley. For the Golden State Warriors at point guard, Steph Curry, Klay Thompson at the shooting guard position, and Draymond Green at the small forward. Also, we have Harrison Barnes, and at the center position, Andrew Bogut. This is a 10,000 game simulation between these two teams. But before I get into the results, including the team stats and the player stats, let me first explain to you how this all works.
Say anything negative, cause I just wanna hear it out your mouth, yeah. Give me fuel, it's a tool that I use to go ahead and run my mouth, yeah. I take shots, I take loss, I make shots, I miss lots. I tell you get big box.
We built an extraordinary simulation machine that delves into the exciting world of NBA teams using a mix of programming and real-world basketball data. The goal? To offer a close-to-real experience of how two teams might perform against each other on the court. The backbone of this innovation is data from basketballreference.com, a detailed database of statistics that we skillfully use to recreate players' unique talents and styles. Picture this. We're diving into the numbers behind legendary players like Michael Jordan. The stats reveal that for every 100 possessions he had, he attempted about 29.8 field goals. And guess what? He made around 52% of those shots. Now, with a dash of Python programming magic, we're able to mimic these moves in a virtual game. Let's break it down. We've got two basic choices for each possession, shooting or not shooting. For Jordan, there's a 29.8% chance he'd take a shot. Remember, that's how often he takes a shot per 100 possessions. Likewise, there's a 70.2% chance he'd hold off. If he went for a shot, he'd nail it about 52% of the time. This simple example paints a vivid picture of how our simulation works. But we're not stopping at shooting, oh no. We're taking a deep dive into a treasure trove of statistics, like 2-point and 3-point field goals, how often they draw fouls, their rebounding prowess, their ability to assist, and even how they block opponents' moves. All these details are fed into the computer program for each player, creating a remarkable recreation of their unique skills. Now, here comes the exciting part. We're crafting teams of 5 players each and simulating their face-off on the virtual court. It's like bringing a dream matchup to life. But we'll admit, defense is a bit tricky. You see, basketball is more than just numbers, and defense is one of those challenges where the stats can't capture everything. Yet, despite these hurdles, we've come up with an ingenious solution. We've set a target score of 160 points for each team to reach. This way, we're capturing the ebb and flow of a game without the need for a ticking clock. This score also keeps the stats realistic, as it's totally possible for these teams to score around 40 points in a quarter. Of course, sometimes possessions might stretch on without shots being taken. In these cases, we call it a team turnover, sort of like the 24-second shot clock expiring. It adds a touch of realism to our simulation. And remember the player lineups? We've got that covered too. Using the real minutes each player spent on the court during the regular season, we simulate substitutions just like in real games. Once per quarter, our simulation makes these shifts, keeping things realistic. Now, we're not claiming perfection. There are complexities in basketball that stats alone can't capture, but trust us, after countless hours of work and careful consideration of every aspect of the game, we firmly believe this simulation is as close as it gets to comparing two teams in the best and most authentic way possible. Now that we understand how this works, let's get into the 10,000 game simulation between the 2016 Golden State Warriors and the 1996 Chicago Bulls. This Golden State Warriors team went 73-9, breaking the previous record held by the 1996 Chicago Bulls that went 72-10. I'll be interested to see what you think of the simulation, because I'm sure many of you won't like the results, but let's get into it nonetheless. It's the Warriors versus the Bulls. Scottie Pippen, Dennis Rodman, Longley, Michael Jordan, and Ron Harper. And for the Golden State Warriors, Harrison Barnes, Draymond Green, Andrew Bogut, Klay Thompson, and Steph Curry. So first, let's look at some of the standout players from the 10,000 game simulation. The scoring champion, that is, the player who scored the most points on average in the 10,000 game simulation, and this belongs to Steph Curry. Surprisingly, he averaged more points per game than anyone, including Michael Jordan. He scored 34.86 points per game, would grab 5.77 total rebounds, and dish out 6.37 assists per game. He also averaged 1.22 steals, 0.13 blocks, and 1.3 turnovers. He shot 57% from 2, 46% from 3, which is just insane, and 91% from the free throw line. So incredible shooting from the best shooter in NBA history, and this was arguably one of the best shooting years he's ever had, and it shows. Amazing performance from Steph Curry. Alright, the total rebound champ, no surprises here, this goes to Dennis Rodman. Dennis Rodman was one of the best rebounders in NBA history, and he takes the rebounding championship here. He averaged 11.56 for the high, and he also would average 5.14 points, 3.68 assists, 0.55 steals, 0.26 blocks, and 0.8 turnovers. Alright, the assist champion, this one actually goes to Draymond Green. He averaged more assists per game than anyone at 6.58. He also would score 15 points per game, would grab 10 rebounds per game, and he averaged 0.9 steals and 0.77 blocks. So pretty good numbers from Draymond Green. The steals champion, yes, this one goes to Michael Jordan. Oh, and look at that, he averaged 34.65 points per game, so very, very close to what Steph Curry was averaging in the points category. He also averaged 6.31 total rebounds, 5.3 assists, 1.84 steals, 0.3 blocks, and 1.43 turnovers. He would shoot 51% from 2 and a whopping 42% from 3, though he didn't take very many, at least compared to Steph Curry. Okay, the block champion goes to Andrew Bogut, and he averaged 0.78 blocks, so it looks like hardly anyone was blocking shots in this 10,000 game simulation. He also put in about 6 points per game, 8 rebounds, and 3 assists, so not bad for the starting center of the Golden State Warriors. The turnovers leader, unfortunately this one goes to Michael Jordan. He had some great numbers. He led both teams in turnovers with 1.43 per game, which actually, isn't very high, but it was the highest among both teams. Let's now look at the team stats. The Golden State Warriors would average 153.2 points per game, while the 1996 Bulls would only average 138 points per game. The Golden State Warriors would lead in total rebounds and assists, averaging 72.4 total rebounds and 47.3 assists, while the Bulls would only average 57.6 total rebounds and 41 assists. However, the Bulls did average more steals per game, stealing the ball 9.8 times, while the Warriors only averaged 6.9 steals. The Warriors did have the edge in both blocks and turnovers, blocking about 1.2 more shots per game than the Bulls, and turning the ball over about 3 times less per game than the Bulls. No surprises here, the 2016 Golden State Warriors shot more 3-pointers than the Bulls, but the Bulls in 1996 would take more 2-pointers than the Golden State Warriors. The Chicago Bulls were better at drawing fouls, going to the line slightly more than the Golden State Warriors at 25.1 per game, while the Warriors would only go 23.6 times per game. And in that same vein, the Warriors would commit slightly more fouls than the 1996 Bulls, committing 21.7 fouls per game. Now, if I had to give out awards, this is who I would give them to, starting with the most valuable player, and I give that award to Steph Curry. I mean, he averaged more points than anyone at 34.86, but that's not the only reason. He also would grab 5.77 rebounds and dish out 6.37 assists and steal the ball 1.2 times. But what really sets him apart from all the rest is his shooting. He averaged a 50-40-90, shooting 57% from 2, 46% from 3, and 91% from the free throw line. Those are incredible numbers. Some of the best shooting numbers in NBA history. In fact, in 2016, he in real life had incredible shooting numbers, arguably his his best season ever, and it shows up here in this 10,000 game simulation. Way to go, Steph Curry. Now, the Defensive Player of the Year, I give that award to Michael Jordan, and a lot of it has to do with his steals per game, averaging 1.84, which was significantly higher than anyone else in this simulation. But that's not the only reason. He also would grab 6.31 total rebounds, and not to mention his 34.6 points, and his 5.3 assists and 0.3 blocks. There's no question that Michael Jordan was one of the better defenders in NBA history. The two-way nature of his game is one of the reasons why he is the GOAT. Okay, the sixth man of the year. This award goes to Tony Kukoc, who off the bench had some pretty decent numbers for the 1996 Chicago Bulls. He would average about 15 points per game, 4.28 total rebounds, 4 assists, 0.81 steals, 0.23 blocks, and only 0.7 turnovers. And he would shoot 40% from 3 off the bench. So what a great bench player for the 1996 Bulls to have. The best bench player among both teams. He takes home sixth man of the year. Okay, so the question that you're probably wondering is who won more games? Out of the 10,000 games, who won more? And the answer is, well, don't get mad, but the Warriors absolutely destroyed the Bulls, okay? They won 8,449 games versus the Bulls, who only won 1,551. I know we didn't get to see the stats for every single player, so I'll go ahead and let that start playing while I try to discuss a little bit about why we're seeing the numbers that we did. So I tried to explain exactly how this simulation works, and it's just taking those numbers and using them to estimate the player's contribution. Now, before you go in and say that league pace has something to do with it, remember that these are per 100 possessions, so we are adjusting for league pace. But then how is it possible that the Golden State Warriors are that much better than the Bulls? Are they really that much better? Well, maybe. There's a couple things to consider. I did mention at the beginning that defense is a limitation, and there's certain things in basketball that just you can't grasp just from the numbers alone. Another example of this would be team chemistry, or other intangible factors like clutch play or motivation. But this is doing 10,000 games, so you would think in the long run we'd get a pretty good sense of which team was better. But what it really comes down to as well is the difference in shooting. What we really learned from the simulation is that Michael Jordan, number one, is a fantastic player and would be a fantastic player in any era, including 2016 against the Warriors. He still averaged incredible numbers. But the shooting was so much different because the Golden State Warriors have players A through Z, from the beginning of the starting lineup all the way down to the end of the bench, that can hit the three-pointer. And that is one of the most untalked about advantages of the modern era of the NBA. The shooting is ridiculous. And not only is it ridiculous, but they take so many more three-pointers. Steph Curry in this simulation would take over 10 three-pointers per game. Think about that, 10 per game. In fact, specifically, he took on average about 13 three-pointers per game. Now, he shot the ball great, so keep shooting, Steph Curry. But what would happen if this same Bulls team not only took more three-pointers, but actually practiced and prepared to actually take those three-pointers? Well, then we might be talking about a completely different situation. My overall takeaway is the following. The Golden State Warriors are likely the best team ever in NBA history, and their record proves it, 73-9. I mean, LeBron James has something to say about that since he beat them in the NBA Finals, and maybe that's a different conversation. But they had depth, they had shooting, and they broke the record for a reason. Overall, this gives us a good idea about the differences in numbers of how these two teams competed against their respective leagues. The two leagues aren't the exact same. The NBA in 1996 is not the same as the NBA in 2016. So what we can say here is that the Golden State Warriors were a more dominant team compared to the 2016 NBA league than the Chicago Bulls in 1996. That's something that I think you could conclude from this simulation. And it's truly impossible to compare teams across eras, but with exercises like this, it's fun to see realistic statistics and numbers give us a kind of comparison of the two teams. When I ran this simulation, I was definitely surprised that the Golden State Warriors won as much as they did. What are your thoughts? I'm sure many of you might be looking at this and banging your head against the wall. Well, I'm hoping you found some level of entertainment. I sure did making it. It was really fun. It surprised me, and I wanted to share the results with you. Thanks for watching. This is NBA Informatics, the fusion of technology and NBA basketball.
They say anything negative, cause I just wanna hear it out your mouth, yeah. Give me fuel, it's a tool that I use to go ahead and run my mouth, yeah. I take shots, I take loss, I make shots, I miss lots. That's how you get big boss, you get yachts, you swing lots and pop off a big shot. I ain't done chasing, got big dreams, bigger things, impatient. Who's at the top think they need replacement? Who's at the top think I'm gonna erase them?